A Michelin-starred Boston restaurant, chandeliers glittering, the air thick with wealth. Eshe Adeyemi, a 32-year-old black woman, sits demurely, her elegant dress a silent challenge. Then Evelyn Whitaker, her mother-in-law, makes her move. That flamboyant dress screams lowly origins. She sneers, loud enough for the well-heeled diners to gasp. Daniel deserves better. Eshe's heart sinks, but Daniel stands up. Enough, Mom! The room freezes. The moment ignites Eshe's rise to build a financial empire. But at what cost? Will she crush her critics or create a legacy of empowerment? Tune in to find out. If you're intrigued, sign up to receive our latest stories and comment where you're listening, Lagos or London. Share this journey, because Eshe's fight is just beginning, and the unexpected, thrilling twists and turns will leave you in. Let's begin. The chandeliers of Ciel, Boston's most exclusive restaurant, cast a golden glow over linen-draped tables, where the city's elite sipped vintage Bordeaux and murmured secrets. Eshe Adeyemi, 32, sat poised at a corner table, her deep burgundy dress catching the light like a quiet rebellion. Her skin, rich as polished ebony, gleamed under the soft radiance, but her heart thudded with unease. Across from her, Daniel Whitaker, her husband of 3 years, offered a reassuring smile, his hazel eyes warm against the cold elegance of their surroundings. Beside him, Evelyn Whitaker, his mother, adjusted her pearl necklace, her lips a thin line of disdain. The table, rounded out by 2 of Evelyn's pharmaceutical associates, buzzed with forced pleasantries, but Eshe felt the weight of unspoken judgment. Ciel was a stage, and Evelyn was its director. As a waiter poured another round of wine, she leaned forward, her voice slicing through the restaurant's hum like a shard of glass. "Eshe, that gaudy dress," she said, loud enough for nearby diners to pause their forks. "It screams your lowly roots. Daniel deserves a wife of refinement, not this." The word landed like a slap, dripping with venom. Gasps rippled from adjacent tables, and Eshe's fingers tightened around her napkin, her cheeks burning. The associates shifted, uncomfortably, their eyes darting away, but the room seemed to contract, every gaze pinning her in place. As she opened her mouth, but words caught in her throat, her pulse hammering. She'd faced Evelyn's barbs before, whispered slights at holiday dinners, backhanded compliments about her surprising MBA from a state school. But this was different. This was public, deliberate, a spectacle meant to break her. She glanced at Daniel, expecting his usual quiet diplomacy, but his face had darkened, a storm brewing in his eyes. Before she could speak, he surged to his feet, his chair scraping sharply against the polished floor. "Enough, Mother," Daniel's voice thundered, silencing the restaurant. Waiters froze mid-step, and chandeliers seemed to flicker. "Eshe is my wife, and her strength shames your cruelty. Her roots are courage, something you'll never grasp. Insult her again, and you're dead to me." His words echoed, raw and unyielding, each syllable a blade. Evelyn's face drained of color, her lips parting in shock. The associates gaped, wine glasses forgotten. Diners at nearby tables whispered, their eyes wide with scandalized delight. Eshe met Daniel's gaze, her breath catching, not from shame now, but from a spark of resolve igniting within her. His defense was a lifeline, pulling her from the abyss of Evelyn's scorn. The moment shattered as Evelyn recovered, her smile tight. "Sit down, Daniel," she hissed. "You're making a scene." But Daniel remained standing, his hand finding Eshe's under the table, his grip steady. "No, Mother, you did that," he said, quieter now but no less firm. "We're leaving." He guided Eshe to her feet, her burgundy dress swirling as they walked out, the weight of 100 stairs trailing them. Eshe's heart pounded, not with defeat, but with a fire kindled by Daniel's courage. Outside, under the starless Boston sky, she squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, his jaw set. "You're enough, Eshe, always." But the night wasn't over. Hours later, the Whitaker estate loomed, its marble columns casting long shadows. The family's annual gala was in full swing, a glittering affair of pharmaceutical tycoons and old money. Eshe, still shaken from Ciel, smoothed her new dress, a simple black sheath chosen to avoid Evelyn's wrath, and stepped into the ballroom. Crystal flutes clinked, laughter rose, but the air felt thick with judgment. The Whitakers, heirs. To Whitaker Pharmaceuticals were Boston royalty, their wealth built on drugs and vaccines, their status on exclusion. Eshe, a black woman from Chicago's working-class streets, was an intruder in their eyes. Evelyn, resplendent in emerald silk, held court near the grand staircase, her eyes locking onto Eshe like a predator's. As Eshe and Daniel approached, Evelyn's voice carried over the crowd. "Daniel, darling, come meet Sophia Langley," she called, gesturing to a poised blonde in ivory, daughter of a medical empire. "She's a suitable match." The implication was clear, and guests turned, their murmurs a low hum of anticipation. Eshe's stomach twisted, the restaurant's sting fresh. Evelyn stepped closer, her smile venomous. "Eshe, you must understand. Daniel needs a wife who elevates our name, not diminishes it." Charles Whitaker, Daniel's father, joined them, his silver hair catching the chandelier light. "She's right," he said, his tone cold. "You've got dreams, Eshe, but business, you'll crash before you start. Don't drag Daniel down with you." His words, laced with jealousy of her ambition, cut deep. Eshe had shared her vision, a consulting firm to empower small businesses with financial strategies. But Charles saw only a threat to his legacy. Eshe's hands clenched. But before she could respond, Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. "Eshe's dreams are mine too. She's building something real, unlike your games of status." He turned to Eshe, eyes fierce. "Let's go." They left the ballroom, Evelyn's glare burning into their backs. In the quiet of their car, Eshe's resolve hardened. She would build Apex Financial Solutions, not for the Whitakers, but for herself, and for Daniel, who saw her worth when they did not. The night's scars would fuel her fight, a fire no scorn could extinguish. The memory of Ciel's chandeliers hung like a bruise in Eshe Adeyemi's mind. Evelyn Whitaker's venomous words, gaudy dress, lowly roots, echoing through the sleepless nights that followed. Each syllable was a lash, but Daniel's thunderous defense, his voice, silencing that gilded restaurant, was a spark. At 32, Eshe stood at a crossroads, her heart a furnace of defiance. She would not let the Whitakers' scorn define her. In their cramped Boston apartment, surrounded by takeout cartons and a second-hand desk, she sketched her vision. Apex Financial Solutions, a consulting firm to empower small businesses with tailored financial plans and market savvy, a beacon for those the elite overlooked. Her MBA from a state school, earned through night shifts and grit, was her weapon. But the path was a gauntlet, and the weight of Evelyn's disdain pressed hard. Eshe's days blurred into a relentless grind. She pounded the pavement, pitching to investors in sleek boardrooms where her presence, a black woman with no pedigree, drew raised eyebrows. At a venture capital firm overlooking the Charles River, a silver-haired investor leaned back, his smile patronizing. "Miss Adeyemi," he drawled, "your consulting idea is quaint, but small businesses don't need bespoke plans, and frankly, a male CEO might sell this better." Eshe's pulse quickened, her fingers tightening around her portfolio. She thought of Evelyn's sneer, of Daniel's hand steadying hers at Ciel. "I'm not selling a face," she replied, voice like honed steel. "I'm selling results. My clients will outgrow your doubts." She walked out, head high, but the rejection stung, one of many in a city that worshipped lineage over vision. Back home, Daniel was her anchor. His hazel eyes, warm against the apartment's dim light, held a faith that steadied her. The Whitakers had cut him off, their pharmaceutical fortune a gilded cage he'd rejected for her. To fund Apex, he'd drained his personal savings, a quiet sacrifice he never mentioned. But Eshe felt in every late-night coffee he brewed, every spreadsheet he reviewed. "You're building something real," he'd say, his voice a lifeline when doubt crept in. But the cost was heavy. Their fridge held more leftovers than fresh food, And Eshe's dreams were haunted by Charles's mocking words at the Whitaker Gala, "You'll crash before you start." Evelyn's shadow loomed larger still. Her campaign to tear Daniel from Eshe had begun, insidious and calculated. One evening, as Eshe worked late, Daniel returned from a meeting with a furrowed brow. "Mother called," he said, tossing his coat aside. "She's arranged a lunch with some heiress, Clara Wentworth, daughter of a bank tycoon. White, wealthy, suitable." His voice dripped with disgust, mimicking Evelyn's tone. Eshe's pen froze, the restaurant's humiliation flashing back, Evelyn's sneer, the diner's stares. "What did you say?" she asked, her throat tight. Daniel crossed the room, kneeling before her. "I told her to stop wasting her breath. You're my wife, Eshe, no one else." His words were a balm, but Eshe saw the strain in his eyes, the toll of defying a family that wielded wealth like a weapon. Evelyn didn't relent. She sent embossed invitations to exclusive galas, each paired with a chaperone from Boston's elite, always white, always wealthy, always a silent jab at Eshe's unfitness. Daniel tore them up, but the pressure gnawed. Eshe overheard him on the phone one night, his voice low but firm. "Mother, enough. I'm not your pawn, and Eshe's not going anywhere." The call ended with a slam, and Eshe's heart swelled, but fear lingered. Evelyn's reach was long, her allies powerful. What would she do next? Amid the chaos, Eshe's persistence bore fruit. A small bakery chain, struggling to expand, took a chance on her. She spent weeks crafting a financial plan, cash flow projections, market positioning, supplier negotiations, her nights a blur of numbers and ambition. The bakery's owner, a gruff woman named Rosa, was skeptical. "You're young, untested," she said, peering over her glasses. "Why you?" Eshe leaned forward, the restaurant's sting fueling her. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. I'll make your business soar." Rosa signed the contract, Apex's first client. It was a small victory, but to Eshe, it was a mountain scaled, a whisper of what could be. Word spread. A Forbes reporter, intrigued by Eshe's unconventional approach, requested an interview. "A black woman disrupting financial consulting," the reporter mused, scribbling notes. "That's a story." Eshe's chest tightened with pride, but doubt crept in. Could she withstand the Whitakers' wrath? Evelyn's schemes were only beginning, and Charles's sneer at the gala, "Don't drag Daniel down," echoed like a warning. She pushed the fear aside, focusing on her fledgling firm. Her desk overflowed with client inquiries, each a chance to prove Evelyn wrong. One night, as rain lashed their apartment windows, Eshe sat cross-legged on the floor, papers strewn around her. Daniel joined her, handing her a mug of tea. "You're unstoppable," he said, his smile soft but fierce. Eshe traced the mug's rim, the restaurant's memory sharp. "They think I'm nothing," she murmured. "Evelyn, Charles, those investors." Daniel's hand found hers. "They're wrong. You're building an empire, Eshe. Let them choke on their words." His faith was a fire, warming her against the storm outside and within. As she fell asleep, Eshe's mind raced. The restaurant's humiliation was a scar, but also a spur. She saw Evelyn's sneer, heard Charles's mockery, felt the weight of Boston's elite staring. But she also saw Rosa's contract, the Forbes reporter's pen, Daniel's unwavering A's. Apex Financial Solutions was her defiance, her proof that a black woman from Chicago's streets could rewrite the rules. The Whitakers wanted her gone, but Eshe was just beginning. She would fight not just for herself, but for every dreamer they'd dismissed. The seeds of her ambition were sown, and they would grow, whether the Whitakers liked it or not. The ink on Eshe Adeyemi's first major contract was barely dry, but it felt like a war won. At 32, she'd poured her soul into Apex Financial Solutions, her consulting firm designed to lift small businesses with bespoke financial plans and market cunning. The deal, signed with Harbor Foods, a regional grocery chain teetering on expansion, was a triumph born of sleepless nights and relentless hustle. Eshe had sat across from their grizzled CEO, Martin Hale, in a cramped office smelling of coffee and ambition. "Your plan's bold," he'd grunted, peering at her projections. "Cash flow optimizations, supplier renegotiations, a roadmap to triple their stores. But you're unproven. Why trust you?" Eshe's heart had raced. The echo of Evelyn, Whitaker's sneer from Ciel's gilded dining room, lowly root spurring her on. "Because I've fought for every inch I've gained," she'd replied, voice steady as granite. "I'll make you unstoppable." Hale signed, and Eshe left with a contract worth $200,000, her first true foothold. But victory was fleeting. The Whitakers were circling. Boston's autumn chilled the air as Eshe and Daniel drove to the Whitaker estate, a marble-clad fortress glowing against the dusk. Evelyn had insisted on a family dinner, her invitation a velvet glove over an iron fist. Eshe's stomach knotted, the memory of Ciel's humiliation still raw. Evelyn's venomous words, the diner's stares, Daniel's thunderous defense. She smoothed her navy dress, chosen for its understated elegance, hoping to deflect Evelyn's barbs. Daniel squeezed her hand, his hazel eyes fierce. "We're in this together," he said, but his jaw was tight, betraying the strain of defying. His family, the Whitakers, heirs to Whitaker Pharmaceuticals' drug and vaccine empire, wielded wealth like a blade, and Eshe knew this dinner was no truce. The dining room was a cathedral of opulence, mahogany table gleaming under crystal chandeliers, silver cutlery glinting like daggers. Evelyn presided at the head, her emerald gown a stark contrast to her icy smile. Charles, silver-haired and severe, sat beside her, his gaze flicking to Eshe with thinly veiled contempt. Two cousins, minor players in the Whitaker dynasty, filled out the table, their polite nods masking disinterest. The meal began with strained civility, clinking glasses, murmurs about market trends, but Eshe felt the air thicken, a storm brewing beneath Evelyn's polished veneer. As the main course arrived, Evelyn struck. "Daniel," she said, her voice syrupy but sharp, "I've arranged a meeting with Sophia Langley next week. She's the perfect match, wealthy, refined, and appropriate." The word landed like a guillotine, slicing through the room's pretense. Eshe's fork froze, her pulse hammering. Sophia, the blonde heiress from the gala, was Evelyn's weapon, wielded to erase Eshe. Evelyn leaned forward, eyes glinting. "Divorce Eshe, and your inheritance is secure. The family's future depends on alliances, not liabilities." Her gaze raked Eshe, echoing the restaurant's scorn. The cousins shifted, avoiding Eshe's eyes. Charles smirked, sipping his wine. Eshe's chest tightened, Ciel flashing back, the diner's whispers, her burning shame. She opened her mouth, but Daniel was already rising, his chair scraping harshly. "Stop, mother," he said, voice low but molten, a fire kindled at Ciel now roaring. "Sophia? Appropriate? You mean white, don't you? Eshe is my wife, the only woman I love. Her dreams are worth more than your prejudice." He turned to Eshe, his eyes blazing. "I'd rather build a life with her from nothing than inherit your tainted fortune. Push this again, and we're done." The room fell silent, the chandelier's light flickering like a caught breath. Evelyn's face paled, her fingers tightening around her napkin. Charles's smirk vanished, replaced by a scowl. The cousins stared, forks suspended. Eshe standing just outside the dining room. She'd stepped away to take a client call, heard every word, her heart pounding. She'd lingered in the hallway, intending to rejoin, but Daniel's voice stopped her. His words were a shield, forged in love, deflecting Evelyn's cruelty. Tears pricked her eyes, not of pain, but of fierce pride. She stepped back into the room, meeting Daniel's gaze, a silent vow passing between them. Evelyn recovered, her smile a mask. "You're emotional, Daniel," she said, voice icy. "Think of the family." Charles leaned forward, his tone cutting. "And you, Eshe, chasing consulting dreams? You're out of your depth, you'll ruin him." Eshe's hands clenched, the Harbor Foods contract burning in her mind. "I'm building something real," she said, voice steady despite her racing. Art, unlike your empire built on others' suffering. She didn't know their secrets yet, price gouging, falsified data, but her words struck a nerve. Charles's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Daniel took Eshe's hand. "We're leaving," he said, guiding her toward the door. Evelyn's voice followed, sharp as a whip. "You'll regret this, Daniel." But Eshe felt no regret, only resolve. The contract with Harbor Foods was her first step, a crack in the Whitakers' armor. As they drove away, the estate's lights fading, Eshe glanced at Daniel. "You meant every word," she said, voice soft. He nodded, jaw set. "Every one, you're unstoppable, Eshe." She thought of Ciel, of Evelyn's sneer, Charles's mockery. They wanted her broken, but she was forging a blade. Pex Financial Solutions was her defiance, and this dinner had only sharpened it. The fight was far from over, but Eshe was ready. The Boston skyline glittered beyond Eshe Adeyemi's office window, a constellation of ambition that mirrored her own. At 32, she stood atop a burgeoning empire. Apex Financial Solutions, her consulting firm, had just hit a $120 million USD valuation, a feat that turned heads in a city that once dismissed her. Her tailored financial plans, cash flow mastery, market positioning, growth roadmaps, had lifted dozens of small businesses, from gritty bakeries to fledgling retailers, into profitability. The Harbor Foods contract, inked months ago, had been a spark. Now, Apex was ablaze, its client roster swelling with names that trusted Eshe's vision over corporate giants. Yet, as she signed a lease for a sleek downtown office, the scars of Ciel's humiliation, Evelyn Whitaker's sneer, lowly roots, lingered like a shadow. Success was sweet, but Eshe knew the Whitakers' venom was far from spent. Her latest triumph was personal. In Lagos, her ancestral home, Apex had opened an office, a modest suite buzzing with Nigerian women entrepreneurs eager for Eshe's consulting expertise. She'd flown there last week, walking the vibrant markets where her grandmother once sold fabrics, her heart swelling at the sight of women like her, bold, underestimated, learning to navigate budgets and expansions under Apex's guidance. "This is for you," she'd whispered to her grandmother's memory, standing beneath a mango tree's shade. The Lagos office was more than business. It was a vow to honor her roots, a defiance of Evelyn's scorn at that gilded restaurant table. But back in Boston, danger was stirring, cloaked in the Whitakers' gilded malice. Eshe's discovery came by chance, a whispered tip from a former Whitaker Pharmaceuticals consultant at a networking event. Over cocktails, the man, graying and nervous, leaned close. "Watch your back," he muttered. "Whitaker's not clean." Eshe pressed, her pulse quickening, and he spilled. Whitaker Pharmaceuticals had price-gouged life-saving drugs in Africa, inflating costs to bleed desperate communities dry. Worse, they'd falsified vaccine trial data to rush FDA approvals, risking lives for profit. The evidence, internal memos, doctored reports, was buried, but whispers were spreading. Eshe's mind raced, Charles Whitaker's smug face at the family dinner flashing back, his mockery of her consulting dreams laced with a predator's confidence. She kept the tip secret, a hidden blade tucked away for the right moment. The Whitakers thought her weak, but she was learning their game. Meanwhile, Evelyn's crusade to sever Eshe from Daniel intensified, a venomous echo of that dinner where she'd pushed Sophia Langley as Daniel's appropriate match. Eshe found an embossed envelope slipped under their apartment door one evening, an invitation to a charity ball with a handwritten note. "Daniel, join us with Ms. Clara Wentworth. A fresh start awaits." Clara, another white heiress, was Evelyn's latest pawn, her wealth a glittering lure. Eshe's chest tightened, the restaurant's humiliation surging back, Evelyn's voice cutting through Ciel, Daniel's thunderous defense. She handed the note to Daniel, her throat dry. "She won't stop," Eshe said, voice low. Daniel tore the invitation in half, his jaw set. "Let her try," he said, eyes fierce. "You're my home, Eshe." His words were a fortress, but Eshe saw the strain in his shoulders, the toll of defying a family that wielded power like a whip. Evelyn's schemes grew bolder. She enlisted a family friend, a silver-tongued lawyer named Margaret, to counsel Daniel at a downtown cafe. Eshe, working late at Apex's new office, got a text from Daniel. Mother's lackey tried to sell me on Clara. Told her to get lost. Eshe smiled, but unease gnawed. Evelyn wasn't just matchmaking, she was waging war, her allies circling like vultures. Daniel's defiance at that dinner, "I'd rather build with Eshe from nothing," had stung Evelyn, and now she was doubling down, her prejudice a blade aimed at Eshe's heart. As she wondered what Evelyn would do next, her mind flickering to the consultant's warning about Whitaker's secrets. Were they connected? Apex's rise drew eyes, not all friendly. At a Chamber of Commerce gala, Eshe overheard a rival consultant, a slick man tied to Whitaker's network, muttering about upstarts like her. "She's overrated," he sneered to a colleague. "Her clients will jump ship when she stumbles." Eshe's fingers tightened around her wine glass, Charles's voice from the dinner echoing, "You're out of your depth." She approached. The man, her smile sharp. "My clients stay because I deliver," she said, voice like velvet over steel. "Care to test that?" He faltered, retreating, but Eshe felt a chill. The Whitaker's influence was a web, and she was catching its strands. Back at Apex's office, Eshe worked late, her desk a fortress of spreadsheets and client files. The Lagos office's launch had stretched her thin, but every email from Nigerian entrepreneurs, women mapping their own empires, reignited her fire. She thought of her grandmother's market stall, of Ciel's diners staring, of Evelyn's icy proposal at that dinner. Each was a stone in her path, but Eshe was carving a road. Daniel joined her one night, bringing takeout and a grin. "You're a force," he said, leaning against her desk. "They don't see it yet, but they will." Eshe traced his hand, her heart steadying. "They'll try to stop me," she said, thinking of Whitaker's secrets, Evelyn's schemes. Daniel's eyes hardened. "Let them, we're stronger." As she locked the office, Eshe glanced at the city's skyline, its lights a challenge. Apex was soaring, but threats loomed. Evelyn's relentless plots, Charles's lurking malice, secrets that could upend empires. The consultant's tip was a weapon, but not yet drawn. Eshe's star was rising, but the Whitakers were watching, their claws sharpening. She squared her shoulders, ready for whatever came next, her ambition a flame no shadow could dim. The autumn wind howled through Boston's financial district, rattling the windows of Apex Financial Solutions' downtown office where Eshe Adeyemi burned the midnight oil. At 32, she was a force, her consulting firm now valued at $120 million USD, its tailored financial plans lifting small businesses from obscurity to triumph. The Lagos office, a tribute to her Nigerian roots, hummed with women entrepreneurs charting their futures under her guidance. Yet, as Eshe reviewed client portfolios, a chill settled in her bones, not from the wind, but from a growing sense of peril. The Whitakers' shadow loomed, their venom sharpened by her rise. Evelyn's sneers at Ciel, Charles's mockery at that fateful dinner, they were prelude to something darker. Eshe felt it, a predator's gaze fixed on her empire. The warning came in a dimly lit bar, its leather booths reeking of whiskey and secrets. Eshe met Jamal Carter, a former Whitaker Pharmaceuticals accountant turned whistleblower, his eyes darting like a hunted man's. Over a glass of bourbon he leaned close, voice a hoarse whisper. "Charles is coming for you," he said, fingers trembling. "He's got a doctored report, fake numbers, cooked books claiming Apex is fleecing clients. It's set to drop at the Young Entrepreneurs Gala next week, front of the press." Eshe's heart lurched, the restaurant's humiliation flashing back, Evelyn's voice slicing through Ciel. Lowly roots. Now Charles, with his silver hair and predator's smirk, aimed to ruin her in the spotlight. "Why tell me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm within. Jamal's eyes hardened. "Because Whitaker's dirty and you're not. I've seen their game." He slid her a USB drive. "Proof. Use it wisely." Back in her office, Eshe plugged in the drive, her pulse hammering. Files unfurled, internal Whitaker memos, damning evidence of price-gouging drugs in Africa, inflating costs to bleed communities dry. Falsified vaccine trial data rushed through FDA approvals, risking lives for profit. Her discovery months ago at a networking event had been a spark. This was a bonfire. Charles's smug face at the dinner, "You're out of your depth," echoed. But now Eshe held a weapon. She spent nights cross-referencing the data, building a case to counter his report. If he struck at the gala, she'd strike back, exposing Whitaker's rot to the world. But the stakes were brutal. One misstep and Apex's reputation, her life's work, would crumble. Charles's jealousy festered like a wound. At a pharmaceutical conference Eshe attended to network, she caught him watching her from across the room, his eyes glinting with malice. He'd cornered her later, his smile a blade. "Your little firm's making waves," he said, voice dripping disdain. "But waves crash, Eshe. Don't get cocky." His words, laced with the same venom as his dinner mockery, confirmed Jamal's warning. Charles wasn't just jealous, he was plotting. His empire threatened by a black woman's audacity. Eshe met his gaze, her smile sharp. "I don't crash, Charles, I build." She walked away, her heart pounding, knowing the gala loomed like a battlefield. Evelyn's malice was subtler, but no less lethal. Her marriage schemes, relentless since Ciel and that dinner where she'd pushed Sophia Langley, now took a sinister turn. Eshe found a glossy magazine in their mailbox, its society page circling. A photo of Daniel with Clara Wentworth, another white heiress, at a charity event he'd never attended. A handwritten note, Evelyn's elegant scrawl, read, "The right match awaits." Eshe's stomach twisted. The restaurant's diners, stares flashing back. She showed Daniel, her voice tight. "She's spreading lies now." Daniel's jaw clenched, his hand crumpling the magazine. "She's desperate," he said, eyes fierce. "I shut her down at that dinner and she's grasping. You're my everything, Eshe." His words, echoing his Ciel defense, steadied her. But Evelyn's rumors were spreading, whispered at galas and clubs, painting Eshe as a gold digger unfit for Daniel. The rumors stung, but Eshe channeled her. Fury into Apex. She met clients, diners, boutiques, startups, each session a defiance of Evelyn's scorn. A Lagos entrepreneur emailed, thanking Eshe for a plan that doubled her shop's revenue. "You're changing lives," the woman wrote. Eshe's heart swelled, her grandmother's Lagos market stall vivid in her mind. But late nights brought doubt. What if Charles's report swayed the press? What if Evelyn's lies turned Boston's? Elite against her. She confided in Daniel, curled on their couch, the city's lights a distant glow. "They want me to fail," she said, voice soft. Daniel pulled her close, his voice a vow. "They won't win. You're stronger than their lies, Eshe, and I'm here, always." His faith, forged at Ciel and that dinner, was her anchor. Eshe prepared relentlessly, her office a war room of evidence and strategy. She cross-checked Jamal's files, drafted a gala speech that could pivot to defense if Charles struck. The USB drive was her shield, Whitaker's secrets her sword. She thought of her clients, of Lagos's women, of Daniel's hand in hers. The gala was days away, a stage where Charles planned to break her. But Eshe was no prey. She'd faced Evelyn's sneers, Charles's taunts, a city's doubts. Each scar had forged her, and now she'd fight. Not just for Apex, but for every dreamer the Whitakers crushed. As dawn broke, painting the skyline gold, Eshe stood at her window, resolve like iron. The whispers of sabotage were loud, but her voice would be louder. The ballroom of Boston's Grand Regency Hotel shimmered under a canopy of crystal chandeliers, a constellation of wealth and ambition that pulsed with the energy of the young entrepreneur's gala. Eshe Adeyemi. Du stood backstage, her crimson gown catching the light like a warrior's banner. Her heart thundered, not from nerves but from the weight of what lay ahead. Apex Financial Solutions, her consulting firm valued at $120 million USD, had made her a star, its tailored financial plans a lifeline for small businesses. But tonight she'd learned from a whistleblower that Charles Whitaker planned to shatter her with a doctored report, accusing Apex of fleecing clients. The gala's press, cameras poised, reporters hungry, awaited her keynote speech, unaware it was a battlefield. Eshe clutched a USB drive, its damning evidence of Whitaker Pharmaceuticals' price gouging and falsified vaccine data her only weapon. She was ready to fight. The MC's voice boomed, "Eshe Adeyemi, CEO of Apex Financial Solutions." Applause roared as she stepped onto the stage, spotlights searing her vision. The crowd, hundreds of entrepreneurs, investors, and Boston's elite, gazed up, their faces a mix of admiration and curiosity. In the front row, Daniel Whitaker, her husband, his hazel eyes fierce with pride. Beside him sat Evelyn Whitaker, her emerald gown glittering, her smile a mask of venom. Charles, silver-haired, his smirk a blade, flanked her, his presence a reminder of his dinner taunt. "You're out of your depth." Eshe's pulse quickened. Ciel's humiliation, Evelyn's sneer, lowly roots, and that dinner's sting, Evelyn's push for Sophia flashing through her. Tonight she'd silence them. Eshe began, her voice steady, resonant. 2 years ago, I was told my dreams were delusions, that a black woman from Chicago's streets couldn't build an empire. She paused, eyes sweeping the crowd. But I did. Apex Financial Solutions empowers 500 businesses, from Boston diners to Lagos startups, because I believe ambition knows no bounds. The crowd leaned in, captivated, their applause a wave. She spoke of clients, Rosa's Bakery, Harbor Foods traders, whose growth defied skeptics, her words weaving a tapestry of hope. But as she reached her crescendo, a murmur rippled through the room. Reporters in the back, phones buzzing, exchanged urgent whispers. Eshe's stomach dropped. It was happening. A journalist, her notepad raised, stood. "Ms. Adeyemi, we've received a document alleging financial misconduct at Apex, inflated client fees, falsified reports. Care to comment?" Gasps punctuated. The air, the crowd shifting uneasily. Eshe's eyes flicked to Charles, his smirk widening, a predator scenting blood. Evelyn leaned toward a neighbor, her whisper loud. "I warned them she's a fraud." The room tilted. Ciel's diners, stares echoing in the reporter's scrutiny. Eshe's fingers tightened around the podium, the USB drive in her pocket a burning weight. Charles's report had struck, a dagger aimed at Apex's heart. She'd prepared for this, but the moment was raw, a crucible where one misstep could end her. She took a breath, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I welcome scrutiny," she said, calm but commanding. "But let's talk about truth." She inserted the USB into the podium's projector, her hands steady despite her racing heart. The screen flared, displaying Whitaker Pharmaceuticals, internal memos, price gouged drugs in Africa, costs inflated to starve communities, falsified vaccine data, lives risked for profit. The crowd gasped, murmurs swelling into a roar. "This," Eshe said, her voice a blade, "is the real misconduct. Whitaker Pharmaceuticals, led by Charles Whitaker, profits from suffering while accusing others of fraud." She pointed to Charles, his face draining of color, his smirk gone. "You thought you could bury me, but I see you." The room erupted. Reporters scribbling, cameras flashing. Evelyn's smile froze, her fan fluttering uselessly. Charles lurched to his feet, voice hoarse. "This is slander," he bellowed. "Your consultancy's a sham, overblown promises headed for collapse." His mockery, echoing Ciel and that dinner, was desperate now, a cornered beast's snarl. Eshe stepped forward, her crimson gown aflame under the spotlight. "Collapse," she said, voice like steel. "I've built Apex on trust, lifting thousands while your empire exploits the vulnerable. These documents don't lie. Your family does." She gestured to the screen, memos scrolling damning lines. The crowd's murmurs turned to outrage, eyes on Charles, who sank into his seat speechless, his empire's facade cracking. Daniel's gaze met hers, pride blazing, a silent echo of his Ciel vow. "You're enough." The journalist surged, questions flying. But Eshe raised a hand, her voice reclaiming the room. Apex stands for truth, she said. We'll cooperate with any inquiry, because integrity is our currency. The crowd applauded, a tide turning. Evelyn's whispers, fraud, unfit, drowned in the roar, her face a mask of defeat. Eshe's heart soared, not from vengeance, but from the weight lifting. She'd faced Charles's lies, Evelyn's malice, and stood taller, her evidence a shield forged from months of toil. As she stepped off the stage, the ballroom buzzing, Eshe felt the spotlight's heat fade, replaced by a quiet strength. The hour. Whitakers had struck, but she'd struck harder, their secrets laid bare. Daniel met her backstage, his embrace fierce. You were unstoppable, he whispered. She nodded, the USB drive still in her pocket, a reminder of battles fought. The gala was hers, but the war wasn't over. Evelyn's schemes, Charles's, wrath. They'd regroup. Yet Eshe was no longer the woman who'd trembled at Ciel. She was a star, burning bright, and no shadow would dim her light. The Grand Regency Hotel's ballroom still hummed with the aftershocks of Eshe Adeyemi's triumph, its chandeliers casting fractured light across a crowd now buzzing with her name. At 32, she stood backstage, her crimson gown a quiet flame, her heart steady for the first time in years. Apex Financial Solutions, her consulting firm valued at $120 million USD, had weathered Charles Whitaker's doctored report. Her exposure of Whitaker Pharmaceuticals' price gouging and falsified vaccine data, turning his attack into her victory. The press, once poised to crucify her, now clamored for interviews, their headlines shifting from scandal to exposé. Eshe's breath caught, not from fear, but from a dawning realization. She was free, not just from the Whitakers' chains, but from the need for their approval. Yet, as she stepped into the gala's aftermath, the final threads of her battle awaited. Evelyn Whitaker approached, her emerald gown a stark contrast to her faltering composure. The crowd parted, sensing a confrontation, their whispers a low tide. Evelyn's face, usually a mask of icy control, betrayed a flicker of unease. Her fan stilled. Eshe, she said, voice low, strained. I may have misjudged you. The words were brittle, a half-hearted apology laced with reluctance, her eyes darting to avoid Eshe's gaze. Eshe's pulse quickened, memories of Ciel's gilded dining room, Evelyn's sneer, lowly roots, and that private dinner's venom, appropriate match, surging back. This was no olive branch. It was a concession, forced by Eshe's unyielding rise. She straightened, her voice calm but unyielding. Evelyn, I didn't build Apex for your approval. I built it for those you deem unworthy, those you'd crush to keep your world small. The crowd hushed, eyes wide. Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came. She turned away, her fan snapping open, a defeated queen retreating. Eshe's victory was sealed not by Evelyn's retreat, but by the press's pivot. By morning, headlines blazed. Apex CEO exposes Whitaker Pharma misconduct. Eshe Adeyemi redefines financial consulting. The doctored report, meant to ruin her, had backfired spectacularly, its lies unraveling under scrutiny. Clients flooded Apex's lines. Diners, startups, Lagos entrepreneurs, drawn by Eshe's integrity, her refusal to bow. A Nigerian shopkeeper emailed, her words glowing, "Your courage saved my business." Eshe's chest tightened, her grandmother's Lagos market stall vivid in her mind, its vibrant chaos a root of her strength. The scandal's fallout wasn't just survival, it was ascendancy, Apex's credibility soaring as Whitakers crumbled. Eshe knew Charles, silent at the gala, would not strike again soon, his empire wounded by her truth. Daniel found her backstage, his hazel eyes alight with pride, his embrace a fortress against the world. "You were a storm," he whispered, his voice echoing his Ciel vow. Eshe leaned into him, her heart full. His defenses, standing tall in that restaurant, his voice thundering, "She's worth more than your cruelty." Rejecting Evelyn's schemes at that dinner, "I'd rather build with her from nothing," were the scaffolding of her courage. "We did this together," she said, her fingers tracing his. Daniel's smile was soft but fierce. "Always." They stepped into the ballroom's fading light, hand in hand, the crowd's applause a distant hum, as she felt a weight lift, not just from the gala, but from years of proving herself to a family that saw her as less. As they left the hotel, Boston's skyline sparkled, a canvas of possibility. Eshe's mind drifted to Lagos, to her grandmother's stall where she'd learned to count coins as a child, her laughter mingling with market calls. That girl, barefoot and dreaming, had carried her here, through Ciel's stairs, Evelyn's barbs, Charles's plots. Apex wasn't just a firm. It was a legacy, empowering those the Whitakers dismissed, black women, small dreamers, the unfit. Eshe thought of her Lagos office, its walls alive with women mapping futures, their plans shaped by her consulting. A client's note flashed in her mind. "You showed me I belong." Eshe's throat tightened, pride swelling. This was her DI. Then not wealth or status, but lives changed. In their apartment, Eshe and Daniel sat on the couch, the city's glow filtering through rain-streaked windows. He poured tea, his movements gentle, a ritual born in their lean startup days. "Evelyn's quiet now," he said, a wry grin. "Bet she's rethinking her playbook." Eshe laughed, the sound light, free. "Let her. We're beyond her reach." She sipped her tea, warmth spreading. Daniel's defenses, Ciel's roar, that dinner's ultimatum, were woven into her strength, each a thread in their unbreakable bond. "You believed in me," she said, voice soft. "From the start." He met her gaze, eyes steady. "Because you're Eshe. The Whitakers never stood a chance." Eshe stood at the window, Boston's lights a mirror to her grandmother's Lagos stars. She saw her journey, not the gala's spotlight, but the quiet moments. Rosa's bakery, thriving. Lagos women signing contracts, Daniel's hand in hers. Apex was her answer to Evelyn's lowly roots, Charles's out of your depth, a world that doubted her. It wasn't about crushing the Whitakers, though their silence was sweet. It was about building a world where others could rise. Her legacy wasn't vengeance but freedom. Freedom to dream, to belong, to redefine success. As dawn crept in, painting the skyline gold, Eshe smiled. The girl from Chicago's streets had forged an empire, and its light would burn for generations. And so Eshe Adeyemi's journey, from the sting of scorn to a legacy of empowerment, lights a path for us all. Her story isn't just about triumph, it's about daring to dream against the odds. What moved you most? Was it Eshe's fire, Daniel's unwavering loyalty, or the courage to redefine success? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what this story sparked in you and where you're tuning in from. A heartfelt thank you for joining us on this unforgettable ride. Your support fuels these tales, and we can't wait to share more. Subscribe and hit that notification bell to catch our next story. Until then, keep dreaming big, and we'll meet again soon.